Welcome back. I'm Tedward, and today we're doing a little V12 therapy drive with this gorgeous 2002 Aston Martin DB7. I've reviewed plenty of DB7s in the past, and the reason why I want to take you along for a ride in this one is just because this is objectively the nicest non-DBAR1 version of a DB7 that I've ever driven. A lot of DB7s get a reputation for being rattly or falling apart or having poor build quality, and that isn't false in a lot of cases. A lot of these cars do kind of fall apart, mostly because they're neglected. But you got to remember, these were like over 150 G's new back in the early 2000s. That's a ton of money. It was built during the Ford era, so there's a lot of reused parts like Miata door handles and Mazda taillights, and it's kind of a parts bin thing, but somehow it still very much stands on its own. But it makes it very difficult to find a DB7 that's in like new condition. And this is as close as I've ever seen one. Under the hood is a naturally aspirated V12 making 420 horsepower. And it's rear wheel drive, of course, funneled through a 6-speed manual gearbox. And the DB7 is cheap. Oh my goodness. You can get these, a really nice one, for like $30,000 to $35,000. We've seen them go as low as like $25,000. So if you're on the hunt for sort of a classy topless or coupe cruiser with a V12, you really got to keep your eye on this. They make me really happy. And I have in the past thought about these and thought, hey, you know, they're kind of junky because I've driven some junky ones. But today I'm driving this one and I am just like blown away by how together it feels. The doors, they don't rattle like a Trans Am or anything when you close them. These seats, beautiful leather. You can smell the conditioner in it, and that's making me very, very happy. The steering wheel is in great shape. You've got a little bit of this guy, which is funny. I even saw this on my Honda. It must be like just one of those things that happens either if you have rings or something, but very fixable. But otherwise, look at this dashboard. I mean, it's all leather. It's not cracked. It's not dry. I don't know that I've ever seen one quite this good. Let me just show you a quick look under the hood, and then we'll start it up and just get on the road. We'll have a little chat. It's nice to have a therapy drive. Sometimes you got to just go out for a drive and enjoy yourself, and it doesn't need to be so purposeful. All right, these hoods, oh my goodness. These are really difficult. It's not very warm out right now, oof, but when it's like 100 degrees in the summer and this engine's been running, this release is basically lava. So it hurts, it burns. You want to use like a microfiber if you can to save your fingertips, but there you go, your Aston V12. Back when they were like proper Aston V12s and we weren't dealing with these AMG V8s and all this other stuff, it has a little bit of pedigree. And yeah, sure, it's two Ford Mondeo V6s welded together, but that's okay. It has a real character all its own. These hood struts are kind of ridiculous, honestly. They're very strong. But we'll close this up, give it a little thunk. It's only going to close on one side, I'm sure. Or neither. Okay, I guess neither. Sometimes I get lucky, sometimes I don't. And you have to make decisions on like, okay, now I'm going to put a handprint on the car. Great. We'll take care of that when we get back. All right, cool. We're also going to use our little windshield or wind deflector in the back today, which should help with some of the road noise. But I got to say, a manual DB7 is no concession if you can't afford, say, a DB9 or a Vantage. You know, this is a really cool thing. So to start it up, we've got our key here, turn that, and then we have our engine start stop button right here in the center console. And I love this dashboard. It's very simple. It doesn't have any of the funky stuff that came later in the VH platform cars in terms of anti-clockwise tachometers and things like that. No. It's just simple. It's a little annoying when you get in these, though, because when you have to adjust the seat, which you wouldn't if you owned it, but the parking brake, this handbrake, it's a flyaway. So it's always in this down position, even when it's engaged. It is currently engaged, but it kind of blocks all the buttons to move the seats around, and you cannot move the seats up or down. You're very much kind of stuck and fixed in that position. To release these, and just in case you're ever in one of these and don't want to look like a goofball, it's currently parked, right? So to remove that, we pull up a little bit with a little bit of tension, then we're going to hit our button, and then we're going to push down. But you got to push down a little bit hard just to make sure that that light goes off. And now, look at that. We're free. Even the interior of this car is very clean. A lot of times these like ashtray things, it's still a little wobbly, but that's normal. But like I've seen these just crumble and fall apart. I've seen cracked wood on all these things. I've seen this leather all discolored. I mean, everything in this car, this is incredible. This is like a real time capsule. Oh, I should put a plate on the car. Yeah, that's a good idea. We get pulled over for not being registered. So I love the fall, but the problem with fall is that we end up in a situation where once it gets below freezing in New England, they start salting the roads, and basically the good cars have to go away. Now, I store my cars for the most part, and now that I have my Lexus, I'm actually going to get to store 3 of the cars. So I'm not going to drive the Honda, the Porsche, or the BMW M5 during the winter because I'm going to let the Lexus take the brunt of the salt. You know, I want to keep things from getting brown. And sometimes when I get underneath cars like this only has 14,000 miles on it. But remember, 14,000 miles of nice weather driving, no salt. So underneath this car, it is not brown. Had this seen a winter or two in that 14,000 miles, that odometer is now meaningless because everything is brown and rusty. So sure, the Honda saw kind of one winter, but you know, the things that are brown don't scare me. Everything is pretty good. They do not have a stop sign, but sometimes people stop there anyway. Ugh. These honestly are like the last of the good manual transmissions from Aston Martin, which I know probably sounds insane, but I drive a lot of these cars, and the later cars, the VH platform cars, the throttle mapping, it just doesn't like match the rest of the powertrain, the drivetrain. So it's hard to kind of hit those gears. Even on the upshifts, it always feels like you have to pull out of the throttle like a half a beat or a beat earlier than you go for the clutch, or else you'll spike the revs. Whereas in these DB7s, they just drive normally. You don't have to think very hard about them. Let's get this off the line a little bit. I mean, it absolutely rips. Like 420 horsepower goes a pretty long way. By the way, I don't do this. These skid marks here, they're not me. We'll talk a little bit about this too, because I just went to my photo location, which I rely on as like a safe, quiet place to do my job. It's hard. If you're an automotive photographer or if you've ever tried to shoot cars, I'm sure you've been kicked out of a million places. It's just like the second you bring out a camera in front of a car, they're like, what are you doing here? You must be some outlaw doing something bad. And they're like, dude, I'm just taking a couple of photos. Like, nothing bad is happening. And I am literally in a parking lot full of other cars. So like, what's the difference? Anyway, I could go on for that all day long. Doug DeMuro likes to use churches just because they typically aren't mad at him. But anyway, someone did a burnout in like a section of the parking lot that I usually shoot photos in, and that's bad because, you know, I'm shooting these photos to sell cars and I don't want it to look like I'm doing burnouts in these cars. I mean, sure, we will go out and drive these cars enthusiastically, but I'm not out ripping tires off of the cars. I think the last burnout I did was in the 302 powered Triumph TR6, which I asked, by the way. I don't just go out and do that. So in terms of like being a respectful, look at that juicy 3.2 downshift because it's so easy to drive. You know, you got to be respectful. And sure, like, do we occasionally drive over some speed limits? Yeah, but we do it when we have line of sight. Like, I'm not saying I'm absolved of all my sins, but what I'm saying is I live and drive on roads all day long, and I see the way people drive. And let's go nice and slow over this. These do not have nose lifts. They will make it. Everything makes it over this, but you just got to be cautious. I see the way people drive at speeds that are objectively not scary to me, but in the situations they're driving, they are speeding. And to me, speeding is not necessarily going a mile per hour over a posted speed limit. Speeding is driving in a way that would endanger someone or yourself when the situation doesn't call for it. You know, like if you're on a road where there's a million runners and cyclists and stuff, like you gotta just cool it. And I don't really care what your opinion of cyclists is. They are people, and I don't want to go to jail for manslaughter. This car just feels like brand new. There's no vibrations, there's no rattles, the clutch feels super strong, the transmission feels like it's only been shifted in a buttery perfect way every time. What's going on here? Is this a scooter? Give them a lot of room because it looks like a little kid. Not a kid. You know, doesn't matter. But like, you want to give people a bunch of room when they look uneasy. And that's another thing. Reading body language of other drivers is what's kept me out of trouble all these years, because sometimes you see somebody and you're like, ooh, they're drifting. Like, you start to realize, you're like, oh, they're on their phone. They're not paying attention. Like, I shouldn't make this pass because they're going to come into my lane, not even know I'm there. Whether or not you have the right of way, you always have the ability to prevent an accident because you're recognizing someone else's failure to pay attention. That's a good car. They're driving particularly slow, which is unusual right here, which might indicate that there's an authority figure somewhere hidden along here. We use those clues to figure out, hey, maybe we should or shouldn't be driving very fast. You don't have to be doing something bad all the time just because you like driving and you're an enthusiast, but, you know, pick up on the body language. We could continue the acceleration, but A, we're in a pretty low speed limit area, and B, there's someone walking up here, which means that even if I have an entire lane away from that individual, there could be some oncoming traffic that comes up over this crest of the hill and moves into my lane, like rightfully so, not expecting someone to be going faster than the speed limit. So this is what I'm saying. Just because we're enthusiasts, this is what like respect the drive is all about. Pick your timing, pick your time and place, because it isn't all equal. This is a great little set of corners, but unless I've got a spotter to really tell me what's coming up, you know, people walk their dogs here, so you'll see me always back off. And it's funny when I'll get comments like, oh, this guy's driving so slow, he's a wimp. And it's like, nah, I just don't want to like kill a golden retriever because you wanted an extra 20 miles an hour around this blind corner. If you can't see, you shouldn't really go after it. Look at that. Dude, this is what I'm saying. Like, everybody who's an enthusiast really needs to have at least one manual transmission in their garage just to keep current. It's funny, when I drove my E92 M3 for, I think I had that car for like 6 years. That was a DCT car, and I did love it. And I still owned manual cars, but I wasn't daily driving those manual cars. And I'll tell you, it actually did kind of take its toll on my like skill set, and I had to readjust a little bit when I bought the SI and subsequently the Type R, because I was like, oh yeah, like I did used to only drive manual transmissions from age 16 to like 30, and it is just something you have to be in regular practice of. And I think especially if you're somebody who like really likes a heel toe downshift or something, like that's the kind of stuff that you've really got to be doing regularly, or you just lose it a little bit. Some cars are a lot easier than others, so don't feel bad if it's not the easiest thing in the world for you. Got all the juice in the world here. traction control cut in a little bit on us there, so it is very sensitive, and it's like old school traction control where it's just like a hard stop. It's like, no, you're done. Like we're not going anymore. The other thing is you don't have to race everybody, right? Like, I need this lane. This fella, maybe I don't actually know what he's doing, but like if he wants to get over, like let him, you know? I don't need to be just constantly getting ahead of everybody. Something I learned from my friends cannonballing across the country was what does and doesn't make a difference to your arrival time. And sometimes a little patience is just the way to go. Listen to the rear of this thing. Gives all these little burbles. We get a little bit of main character syndrome as car enthusiasts, and everyone's in our way. But what we really need to do is like learn to adapt to the situation around us. And just because, sure, we're comfortable with some speed and some acceleration doesn't mean that the pedestrian or cyclist or, you know, random child nearby is. I mean, sometimes that can be a really intimidating, scary thing. We don't need to scare people. We want to entertain, if anything. But honestly, you kind of just want to slip by without anybody knowing you exist. There's some bumps here, and that's the thing, you gotta know roads. Like, these bumps don't look like much, and I'm sure you can't really see them on camera, but if you hit that at speed, you'd probably bottom out this DB7. Even as volantes with the convertible, these still handle pretty well. Like, this is still a very entertaining car to chuck into a corner. Oh my goodness, look at the wing on this TL. That's a little much. We've got an NA Miata up here, which we share door handles with. Look at the camber on this thing. Oh, that's aggressive. That sounds mean too. I have such an affinity for those cars, especially when they're set up well on good rubber and a nice suspension. Holy cow, that's like the most fun you can have. This should go yellow, I hope. There we go. Sounds pretty good. But yeah, you want, if you're gonna get a little on-ramp, you want to have your own on-ramp. You don't want to be behind everybody. And like, I'm just gonna shut it down because I don't need to get ahead of that ambulance going at that speed. That's fine. Like, I'm gonna have my little bit of fun, I get my little blast, and I shut it down, because following through, sometimes that's where you end up with problems. A, I don't want to be an inconvenience or a nuisance, because it would be my fault if anything happened with an interaction between that ambulance and myself, or any traffic really. It doesn't have to be an ambulance. But I don't know, my philosophy on enthusiastic driving is kind of like, be a ghost. Be a ghost. No one needs to see you, and if they do, then maybe you did your job wrong. Oh my God, not now. What are you doing? Worst possible time, man. You can't write this stuff. Like, you can keep your eye on someone and be like, okay, they're definitely not going. They would never, of course, they've waited this long, they would never go now. And then they'll pull out in front of a cyclist and to cut you off. Like, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. But that's the thing, you have to be so vigilant and you have to be so on top of your game, especially driving other people's cars or expensive cars that you respect. There's the golden retriever I was just talking about not hitting. That's what I'm saying. Like, maybe you hate people, but I bet you don't hate dogs. Everyone loves to say, like, oh, it's too people-y out there. I hate everybody. People are the problem. Well, you know what? If you hit that golden retriever, you'd never forgive yourself. And here's the world's most dangerous yield sign. In order to look back and back again, you do kind of need to stop. I only like it because it means I can roll it if I want to. Legally. But I'm not just going to go blast across oncoming traffic and potentially hit anybody doing that. That's a little nuts. So even then, even when road signs say, hey, this is cool, it might not be. It's the same way in the opposite direction, where like, you have all been on roads that are like 30-mile-an-hour roads that are clearly designed to be like 70 miles per hour. They're like 2 lanes with Jersey barriers, and for whatever reason they've got like a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, and it's insane. And then you get pulled over and they're like, what were you thinking? This is a 35. You're like, buddy, this is a literal runway. What are we talking about? So anyway, I'm done. I'm gonna go bring this car back. I got my photos, I had fun driving it, got to hang out with you guys for a little bit. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. I'm gonna do some more therapy drive stuff coming up soon in some various vehicles, but I wanted to just show you what a really, really, really nice DB7 can look like, because I know that it can sometimes be the butt of the joke in the Aston Martin world, but these have grown on me so much. And I think if you're a respectable enthusiast who drives, okay, we're gonna go through this because I'm not standing on the brakes for that, sorry. If you're a respectable enthusiast who isn't out there terrorizing neighborhoods and doing burnouts in the parking lots that I actually just need to do photos in, that's kind of a bothersome thing. You know, all cars can really serve your purpose, some better than others. And I think this Aston Martin, like, man, what a great like summer, fall cruiser this would be. And imagine someone saying, oh, DB7s, those are junky. And then you show up in this with like your perfect leather, paint's all done nice, no squeals, rattles, anything, engine pulls strong. You'll show them. So anyway, don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.